This sort of writing is not any better than the writing that we were getting in the dialogue in other episodes. It's just that because of the structure of this episode, where we are cramming a lot of story into these little flashbacks like this, these vignettes, it feels more appropriate. It feels like, this is where you would do this.
Butterfly in the sky.
Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to that channel. If you're here, you know the deal, so I don't need to explain. We're looking at The Wheel of Time Season 3, Episode 4. It's been a really long time since I have thought about Season 3, since I was going back to refinish Season 2, but here we are again. It's been even longer since I've read this particular moment in the books. All I remember is that it seemed to follow the books more closely, and I don't remember all the details, but I think I remember some of the bigger things that were different, and anyway, we'll get to that when we get to that. But let's just jump right on into it. Before we do though, please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's totally free for you, and it really does help this video gain some momentum in the algorithm. Also, hyping. I don't know what that is, but if you can do it, that is very important now, apparently. Otherwise, if you have the means and you're feeling generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. You can become a subscriber, even for just $1 a month, or you can leave me a one-time tip, also just for $1, and I do appreciate everything. Let's go. Prep first. 5-hour energy. Could not do this without it. All right. The first scene is with Rand and his gang, which includes Moiraine and Lan and the Aiel girls and Egwene, all heading out to the Wastes to go through the trial at Rhuidean. But they've stopped so that Lan and Rand can have a training session, sword training session. This is essentially a reflection of the scene at the start of Book 2. In Book 2, the first scene we get is Rand and Lan working on their sword fighting. And we have a couple of different things that come up in the conversation, including one that is brought up here about the flame and the void, which is something that Rand learned from his father. And it's basically a meditation technique so that, you basically temper your emotions and focus only on focus on the present, basically. That's what it is. And then the conversation in the show slowly moves into Rand talking about how he was so familiar with his life back at home, and then Lan takes this as an indication that he's feeling self-conscious about being in an unfamiliar landscape, and he's like, you could come to know this place too. And then we got Rand saying, well, back at home when a lamb was born, we would cut the mother lamb and put the blood on the lamb so that the mother would accept it. And that's just not going to happen here. But he is kind of excited at the prospect of, there are so many other things in life that I wanted to be, but, it'll be nice to come across something I actually can be, whereas the other things he can't now because he's the Dragon Reborn. Now, one piece of information that was in the book that does not exist here, and I understand the reason for it, was Lan teaching Rand the kind of final desperate technique in a sword fight, which is you're losing, there's no way you can win. So what you do is you let the other guy stab you, and since their weapon is occupied now, that means there's nothing stopping you from getting in a fatal blow on the other guy, like you stab them in the heart, essentially. And this comes back at the very end of Book 2, because it's how Rand finally defeats Ishamael, is he lets himself get stabbed and then stabs Ishamael. But this happens after the finale of what would have been the finale of Book 2, so there's no opportunity for that to happen, and so it's not a lesson to learn here. And I said this, I think, in my review of the finale of Season 2, that I think that's a moment of foreshadowing. Like, you can pick up on patterns in storytelling, especially in theme, where you hear lessons or you read lessons being taught to certain characters or certain themes coming up over and over again, and it sort of foreshadows what is going to happen at the end. And I've seen a few things coming up in the books that I believe are foreshadowing the end, which is sort of a self-sacrifice in order to save everybody else. And that was lost now in the adaptation. So, the show's not around anymore, so what does it matter? Anyway, let's keep going. The scene ends with Egwene approaching Moiraine, who's been watching the sword fight happening, and Egwene is like,
we had a saying back in the Two Rivers about a watched pot never boiling.
And then Moiraine just very rudely like,
yeah, if only it was that easy to stop a pot from boiling.
Like, she missed what the point of the metaphor was, but at the same time, like, okay, that actually worked. Why is Moiraine so freaking unpleasant? I mean, didn't she go through sort of a psychological, emotional transformation at the finale of season 2 where she should now be a little bit more compassionate towards other people? I don't know. Just doesn't seem like she's learned anything. In the next scene, we've got Moiraine and Egwene are in a tent with the Wise Ones. They are brought some food by a guy, Shine, whatever. It's like a servant. We'll get into it. Anyway, Egwene asks, are the Wise Ones the only ones who have servants? And then we've got the Wise Ones explaining what a Gaishan, whatever is.
They're Gaishan, not servants. In the dance of spears, the most G is given by touching an armed enemy without killing or harming in any way. Those who are touched become Gaishan.
That's not the only way, if I'm remembering correctly, how you fall into this role, but either way, it's basically voluntary servitude until you've served out your term. And Moiraine is just super confrontational. If you're trying to get information out of somebody or create some sort of a trust between yourself and the other people, you don't start out your conversation by being rude.
You're very comfortable answering questions we have no interest in the answers to.
You are a saucy boy.
Which to me is also sort of like a nod to the fact that what they just did with this whole Gaishan explanation thing was just info dumping. It was there to inform the audience of who they are. Okay, so the Wise Ones asks, well, what do you want to know? And Moiraine is like, well, I want to know how the hell you knew we were coming. And they explain very cryptically that they can see things that might be or things that are happening currently. Like, they just very cryptic. And then they end off this conversation saying that, you know, there are certain things that we didn't know. Like, we didn't know that Egwene would be coming, and we only knew there was a chance that Rand would be coming, and we knew that there were certain scenarios or certain circumstances that were necessary for people to survive. Like, we knew that if Lan didn't come, he would die. If somebody else would have come, they would have died. I don't really care to check who it was. And then she accidentally lets it slip that we knew that if Moiraine, you didn't come, you would, or no, they said you would die if you don't go into Rhuidean. Like, she says, and if you don't go into Rhuidean, we know that you will. And the other Wise One is like, shh, don't say anything. I always hate when that happens. And it's supposed to be like, these are clever people or wise people or people who are very good at controlling what they say, or they're really familiar with this scenario. Like, if you know, you should never divulge the future or possible futures to somebody. Like, that's a no-no. Then why are you screwing up like this? Just, especially to strangers who you would be extra cautious against. And Moiraine didn't do anything extra clever to get that out of them. She's just sitting there silently listening to them go on and on and on. So anyway, it's not terrible, but that annoys me. So Moiraine knows that she needs to go into Rhuidean at this point, or she'll die. Oh yeah, they also mentioned that if Rand survives Rhuidean, then that means that some of the Aiel will survive. So obviously they're seeing things that would happen if certain circumstances don't come into existence. And so it's just indicating that they see possible futures. This is, I mean, something that we're going to see play out with Moiraine in the show. But anyway. At this point in the books, we've already seen this multiple versions of your own life kind of thing play out already. So they're doing it here in the show, or introducing it, and they're creating some anticipation for what we want to see for ourselves for the first time in the show. I have to at least, say good job on doing that. This is not a bad thing to do. You want to be a little bit cryptic to kind of make us go, what does that mean exactly? I want to understand what you mean by that. And then when we see it play out, we go, oh, I get it now. They're seeing these multiple versions of their own life. Makes sense. The one thing that's just objectively bad about this conversation really is the way that it ends. And it's a very simple mistake. It's a metaphor that does not fit. So one of the wise ones says,
It is possible for women to see some ways the future may be woven in Rhuidean. No more than that. Change comes like an avalanche, whether we want it or not.
Now remember, these Aiel live out in the desert where water is super scarce. They were shocked to see the ocean. It's never rained in their lifetimes. And yet she uses the metaphor of an avalanche. I mean, I've never seen avalanche used for anything other than snow sliding down a mountain. So it's just odd. I don't know. They could have said anything else, but whatever. Why didn't they use the metaphor of like a dust storm? Like how, so I live in Arizona where we get haboobs and these giant dust storms that will move in. And it literally does change the landscape. It will move sand dunes. It's just, it changes everything and it happens very quickly and there's no stopping it. Like you can't stop a haboob, sorry. So anyway, that would have been a much more fitting metaphor, but what are we gonna do? Oh my gosh, I forgot all about this scene. It's so dumb. All right, so now if we're just judging the show, pretending the books do not exist at all, then it goes, okay, it makes sense that Rand would get beaten by Aviendha, just easily disarmed. And actually, even in the book, you might say there's probably, she's more experienced at that point. She would have had, a decade of learning how to disarm somebody. But they just explained in the show that you become a slave to somebody if you are disarmed by them or touched by them in combat, like you're fighting each other. And it's almost like they forgot the thing that was just said in the scene immediately before it. And this gets back to what we learned about how this show was written, where there were different writers for each scene, or maybe there was a scene that was written way before or way after another scene that might have just happened right before it. And that's what this feels like. It feels like the people who wrote this scene forgot what happened in the scene immediately before it. Or maybe the scene immediately before it was written by somebody else because they explained some rules and then we get to this scene and the rules are forgotten. Yeah, Aviendha is not happy that Rand has been fighting with a sword and she's like, I told you never to touch a sword. And he's like, what? So am I a Aiel or not? It's only the Aiel who don't touch swords. And then he pushes her aside or pushes her blade aside, doesn't matter, and she disarms him and throws him to the ground, basically. And so isn't he supposed to be your slave now to, whatever.
So dumb.
Stupid.
Anyway, so Aviendha then turns to Lan, is like, that means you too, no sword for you. And Lan's like, psh, whatever. And
Trying to watch. To make fun of course, because it's stupid.
She threatens him and then he unsheaths his blade and she's like, oh, you asking me to dance? And they do this thing that I really hate in all sword fights, which is they touch blades and they hold it there, which is so not something that you do. And this is just me being a martial arts snob. If you didn't know, I'm a fencer. You do not rest your blade on your opponent's blade ever. It's just the stupidest thing you can do because your opponent then knows exactly where your blade is because you're touching theirs. So you let go and they'll know that's the second that you've let go. Staying off of it or making irregular contact is a far better tactic. And even when you're sparring, or we call it bouting in fencing, you still wouldn't do this. You're practicing being deadly. You're practicing doing things that will actually work. And touching the blade, it would never work. It's just, anyway. This is, again, me being just a fencing snob, but I hate it. It makes me cringe. I'm sure people love seeing this sort of thing. I don't. Okay, there's a quick engagement. I'm not going to break down every single move, but there's a lot of contact movement. So, or like where you're seeing pressure on the blade is maintained, or there is some sort of a, grab your arm and pull it this way sort of a thing. And between what appears to be 6'2" man and like this puny woman, it doesn't matter how skilled she is. If he's supposed to be equally skilled, he's gonna kick her ass. And it's like, ooh, it's super even. And he can maybe respect that she's got some skill, but it should be a game to him. And so he's laughing after this first engagement, but then they get into the second engagement and she disarms him. She literally tosses his sword aside. So Lan should be a slave to her now too.
You guys want me to put something else on, or?
No.
We just want to see how stupid it gets.
Stupid.
I don't know why this has to be explained to people in Hollywood, but it does seem to need to be explained. If you have two people of equal skill level, and one of them is bigger and stronger than the other, the bigger, stronger one is going to win. You have to think about she would have to be so much more skilled and experienced than Lan, who has way more experience and skill than I'm sorry. If they're supposed to be equal, he will still win. But they probably aren't equal anyway. I'm guessing she's supposed to be like, what, 19 or something like that in the books, maybe in her early 20s. Lan is much older than this. He's probably been sword fighting for as long as she has been alive. If she picked up a blade at age 10, or not a blade, but a spear at age 10, that would mean she's got around 10 years of experience with it. But even if you pick it up at 10, girls don't really grow into a strong enough body to properly handle a blade until around 12. So, and I'm just thinking back on my years of teaching fencing. Boys 14, girls 12. You can fence younger than this, and these are way lighter weapons. I don't have any of my fencing blades in this room, but you need to have a certain amount of physical strength in order to properly wield a weapon. And you got to be big enough to do that. And so she would have had a very limited amount of time that she could gain this experience, even if it's her entire life. Well, it's Lan's entire life too, but has been, whatever. And this on contact thing is, I'm being a fighting snob here, but it does bug me. It bugs me because, well, first of all, the whole you should be my guy shine now thing, that's just ignored right here. But also, it just seems very unrealistic. I like the idea that Lan recognizes she's got a lot of skill and is fun to spar with. That's realistic, that happens, but she should have no chance against him. He can outreach her, he can outmuscle her, he can out-experience her. And she wouldn't have fought so many folks with swords. Like for her, she fights people with spears. It's a very different fighting style from a sword. So you would come across somebody with a sword and go, what do I do? You'd probably keep your distance from them more, work on your time. Oh, I gotta shut up about this now. It's just gonna go on forever. And then Lan does this like sword twirling thing that is so dumb. Yeah, so then Lan disarms her, but she's got 2 spears, so it's only a half disarm.
This is supposed to be some sort of peak male specimen.
So does the slavey thing go the other way? Does she have to be his slave now?
It's getting hot in here. Very good show.
I don't know. What is the show telling us?
It is getting hot in there!
Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way to support this channel. Or if you're feeling generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the Money Heart Thanks button down below. You can become a subscriber or leave me a one-time tip. Anything is much appreciated. Now let's get back to it. Anyway, the wise ones come in and stop the duel or bout, whatever, and say, hey, you need to stop this foolishness. And then Aviendha's like, no, I don't want to be a wise one. And they're like, you went off to cross the dragon wall or whatever because you were going to search for the dragon or whatever, it doesn't matter. And you were told not to. You can't run from what you are. So she's supposed to be a wise one. And they stand there and like, okay, give us your stuff. And in the book, you strip down naked and you go into Rhuidean. And so here they're like, give us your stuff. She hands over her spears and the wise woman takes like these 2 spears and breaks the handles over her knee. And it looks like they're made of papier-mâché. Like it's so easy. Either she's really strong or there is no reason those spears should have survived even one strike in any of this duel that she just had with Lan. It's so silly. Why did they have her break them over her knee? I don't understand. Like, what was the point of that? Why couldn't she just take them? Take them and pass them off to somebody else or toss them in the fire, like anything. Oh my gosh. It's very ridiculous looking. Anyway, Aviendha takes off a bunch of her stuff and then she assumes a position of reception and says, I ask your permission to enter Rhuidean. And the first wise one goes, the question is asked, I answer yes. And then the other one goes, I answer yes also. And then she offers her some comfort. She says, a strong mind and a strong heart are your weapons now, but you hold them as surely as you've ever held a spear. They will see you through anything. They tell her to come back to them and she's like, I'll be back before you get there or whatever, it doesn't matter. And then she runs off into the dark heading for Rhuidean. This is actually true to Aviendha's journey and her growth in the book. So she did not want to stop being a maiden of the spear. She didn't want to be a wise one. She liked the warrior-esque lifestyle. And so, you know, there you go. At least they're doing that. Even though they're doing stuff that's like, oh, it's actually from the books, I'm still annoyed because it's almost like a too little too late. So, you know, it's hard. Oh, whatever. Anyway, she runs off and then we jump to Rand sitting at a fire and Moiraine comes over and talks to him. Is like, oh, you're planning to go into Rhuidean tomorrow, aren't you? And she's like, don't you know that they say the men wait sometimes weeks before they're given permission to go in. And Rand is like,
dude, just tell me what it is you want. I want you to tell me what you're going to do so that I can help you.
I don't believe that for a second.
Now, this is also a moment where the show is finally doing something that is truer to what was done in the books, which is Moiraine has to basically submit to Rand and like, I will be loyal to you. I will do whatever it is that you want. I will do what you say. She has to basically put all of her trust in him. They sort of make this all backfire though by the end of the season, if I remember. And this is maybe Rand's best moment in the show. He stands up to Moiraine. He goes,
you've never tried to help me before, Moiraine. That's all I've ever done. You want me to confide in you, to trust you. Well, how about don't hinder me from doing anything that I'm trying to do. Like, don't stop me. Don't use me for your ends or the tower's ends. Can you promise me that?
And she goes,
I will do nothing to hinder you from fulfilling your destiny. I've devoted my life to that. But I will not promise to watch while you lay your head on a chopping block.
And he comes back at her with,
it's not good enough, Moiraine.
Thank you for not putting up with her bullshit. She is such an obnoxious character. I feel like I was waiting 2 whole seasons for somebody to do this. So then we've got Rand and the gang are walking and they're getting closer to Rhuidean and he's talking to Rhuarc.
What are they talking about? You know what? I hate you.
And the first thing that Rhuarc says to him when Rand is asking about, the trial in Rhuidean, Rhuarc's like, we're not supposed to talk about what happens in there.
Remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Except for herpes. That will come back with you.
But then Rand is like, so, is there anything different for the Karn if he goes in than for chiefs? And then Rhuarc just tells him.
We are marked by Rhuidean, the very few that make it out alive. Every chief on the left arm. The Karn, he who comes with the dawn, will be marked twice. That is how we will know him.
Didn't you just say you can't tell? He just tells him the Karn will be marked twice. So he shows him the dragon mark on his arm. And I know that some people didn't like this. I actually liked it. I think it's kind of neat that it looks like it's, grown on his arm and it's metallic. I kind of like that. It does go all the way down, I think, his palms and it goes further down, I think, in the book than I don't care about that stuff, really. It makes sense to be able to cover it with a sleeve so that the makeup department doesn't have to do this every single time. But anyway, he tells him the Karn will come out marked twice. So I get it once. It looks just like this, by the way. If you're the Karn, you'll get it twice. So if he wants to fake it and he can channel, now he can do it. This might be why that rule exists. What happens in Rhuidean stays in Rhuidean. I guess you could argue that, well, everybody would have seen the tattoos on the chiefs, but he didn't have to tell that to somebody who's from the outside world. I mean, if he came back with the 2 tattoos and we're like, whoa, I didn't even tell you about this and you did it, it's a little bit more trusting of a coincidence, or we go, okay, he didn't know about this, or we didn't tell him. We're pretty sure he didn't know about it, but he came out with both of them. Oh, whatever. They finally show up at Rhuidean and they're marveling at the city in the clouds. And they didn't notice that just like a couple 100 yards to their right were a bunch of tents belonging to an enemy tribe, the Shido.
Right there!
So there's almost a conflict, which I thought was kind of weird because you're the chief and you are familiar with the traditions of being around Rhuidean, you don't fight. So why did you immediately put up your veil and whatever? It's like the wise ones earlier slipping and accidentally informing Moiraine that if she doesn't go into Rhuidean, then she's gonna die. Or the chief deciding to explain the rule is what happens in Rhuidean stays in Rhuidean, but then being like, oh, by the way, you're gonna get 2 of these if you're the real Karn, and then showing them off. Oh, whatever. I care so little about the characters and the scenario that is happening here because, first of all, there are a bunch of new people being introduced, and second of all, it's hard. The only person I care about in this entire scenario here is Rand, and it's just such a minimal amount of care that I have for him as a character. So it's like, whatever. Basically, we get a whole conversation where one wise one is asking the gal, like, oh, where's your husband? And she's like, oh, he's dead. My new husband has gone off into Rhuidean. And, if he doesn't come out, then this guy, I forgot what his name is, and he ends up being a big character in the books. He's gonna go in after his brother. And they're all upset that they've brought a wetlander to Rhuidean. And then Rand decides to use that moment to step forward and do the whole gesture of reception and like, I ask your leave to enter Rhuidean. They just said they don't, oh. But anyway, the two wise women are like, yeah, you got my permission, go ahead. But the others are not having it. I mean, he should have at least not had his sword on his back. That's like a very insulting thing to, that these people look down on the sword, like it is not a good thing. And even though you don't have the context for that, you pick up on the clues and you go, maybe I shouldn't ask a bunch of people for permission to go into like their sacred city while I've got a sword on my back. I'm so annoyed. Okay, now so the other guy, Couladin, he's a much bigger character in the books. He's really upset. Rand has apparently presented himself. This gesture is what women do. And then he's like, he's a wetlander. He's too soft. He's going to get his ass kicked. And then he attempts to like lash out at Rand or attack him. But then the one wise one, whatever, she uses the one power to block him and it casts him down, whatever. And you got Moiraine and Egwene glancing at each other like, ooh, did you see that? They can channel. Like they didn't know this before, which they would in the book, but okay. I'm convinced that the actor who plays Lan is not here on this shooting day because you never see his face in this scene. He's just this mysterious hooded figure who's always turned slightly away from the camera. It's okay. That's a good way to do it. It's fine. Everybody gets told to screw off except for the wise ones and Rand. Anyway, so everyone's leaving and Moiraine quickly whips around and goes, I ask your leave to enter Rhuidean. And they're like, oh, you shouldn't have been told. And she goes, does it matter if I've been told? And they're like, well, it might or it might not.
Oh my god. Shut up!
And the other wise one is like, when we saw you go through the rings, it was always you who asked. Didn't she just ask now? What a weird thing to say. Anyway, they just keep talking about how, yeah, we don't know. It seems like it's dangerous that you know because people who know either become too complacent or they try to force things to happen. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just, they're using this dialogue here to build suspense. Like, now that you know, it's going to be so much worse. You don't need that, but it's, I mean, if I wasn't so already annoyed at this show for other things, this probably wouldn't bother me. Anyway, they give her permission and tell her there's going to be 3 rings. You can step into any one of them and you will see your life unfold before you in variation, your future in variation, 1,000 possible futures, and you'll come out of it without a doubt that some things are for you and some things are not. So she should come out knowing a lot more certainly what she's supposed to do or what's going to happen or whatever. You get the idea. And they tell Rand that you're going to walk through the glass columns and every step forward will be a step backwards in time. Sometimes just a few years, sometimes hundreds of years. To lead is to understand. Basically, he's going to live the life of some of his ancestors because you need to know your past in order to lead, something like that. Now, in the books, Rand and Mat go in. So does Moiraine, but like separately, and then also obviously Aviendha. Like, I can kind of see that if you were going to take, okay, what is the least necessary character to be in this situation? Because we have to reduce the amount of time that we spend in Rhuidean so we can only be there for one episode. Mat would probably be the one to go. But we don't really need to see any of the stuff that happens to Moiraine, honestly. We don't need to see any of her stuff. And unfortunately, it would mean that you've got to move the things that happen to Mat in this city to somewhere else. And they did not choose well in how they decided to make that happen. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So they're led up to this line of spears and other weapons and told to disarm in order to honor the last true Aiel.
Shut up! You're driving me crazy! Get in there!
Anyway, they do, and then they're sent off, and they're looking at the fog, and Moiraine is going, it's so weird. It's like I can see this, like, the one power is in this fog. It's like a dry fog, but when I look at it, it's gone. They see these gigantic statues and say it doesn't look like this is Aiel work. And they walk up to this gigantic tree, and Moiraine identifies it as Aviendha, and Rand explains the Tree of Life, which has never once been brought up in the show that I can recall. So people would be watching this going, what is that? Like, there's this context for the moment that should be, wow, there it is. Like, didn't think we would see that. Except the audience is just going, what, this is some sort of a tree that's important somehow? Anyway, they're hanging out under this tree for a moment. Rand is like, oh, it's so peaceful underneath here. And Moraine's explaining that they knew that the Aiel had it. They didn't know where it went, that it's like a 3,000-year-old tree. And they at one point entrusted a sapling to Cairhien. And Rand is like, I don't remember seeing a tree like this in Cairhien. And she's like, yeah, well, you wouldn't have, because my uncle chopped it down to make a throne for himself. There's this history of a relationship between the tree killers and the Aiel, and these are things that would have been good to allude to prior to this moment, so that way when you get to this, you're like getting the context. You're like going, oh, okay, I see this, I get it. But it's like instead they're moving all of that foreshadowing and all of that setup. You're moving it to immediately before the reveal, so it doesn't feel like this world has a whole lot of depth to it or a whole lot of history to it. When you ignore that history earlier on, and then you throw it in here, it feels like it's just thrown out there. Like, oh, now we're going to find out about this tree, so there's a tree. It's important to the Aiel, and it's also related to Cairhien and Moraine's past and all this stuff. What you want to do is drop little hints of these things much earlier in your story, so that way it feels like your world is lived in and old and has this history that the reader, or the viewer in this case, doesn't have the full story for. So then you get to stuff like this, the story suddenly gains its context, and then we look back at the previous episodes and they have not exactly a new meaning, but more meaning. So you see it the first time and you go, oh, I'll bet there's more to it than just what seems to be on the surface. Here's where you get what's beneath the surface, and then it makes it rewatchable. Yeah, so Moiraine goes on to explain that that's the reason why the Aiel went to war with us. They came over the spine because they heard that my uncle cut down this tree. And so they went around burning villages looking for him, and they finally captured him on the slopes of Dragon Mount. And then Rand is like, that's why my mother was on the slopes of Dragon Mount and gave birth to me there. And, we've been connected since before we were born, or before he was born. Moiraine makes some comment about how, sometimes fate seems so strong, it's like a tide sweeping us along, and other times it seems so delicate, like Gossamer. This is, again, something that would have really had more impact if we had more indication of all of this stuff much sooner in the story. I'm just not remembering any indications of it in the show. Like, when did they talk about this tree? Never. A tree, as far as I know, has never once been mentioned in the entire Amazon adaptation. Anyway, Rand basically just scowls at her and goes, you shouldn't have come here, and then walks off towards the columns that you can kind of see in the distance in the fog. And I'm just going, why would you say, what's the point of saying that? I'm not really sure why. Like, what did he even mean by that? You shouldn't have come here. Like, you just learned this history between yourself and Moiraine, that you are fated to have paths that regularly cross in certain ways, and you shouldn't have come here? I don't know. It's cryptic. I still don't understand why it means anything going forward, but whatever. So Rand is walking up to the pillars, and he can see up ahead of him is Muradin, I don't know. It's the guy that, remember, the Shido said, oh, my new husband, he just went through. He's been in there for a while, but when he comes out, if he does, then his brother Couladin's going to go in, whatever. So he has to remind us of who that guy is. And he goes, Muradin? Like, oh, your wife said that you were in there. And it's okay. It's not bad. That's actually not terrible. But anyway, Rand starts walking forward, and then at a certain step, he seems to really struggle and starts falling to his knees, and his hands touch the ground, and suddenly, bam, he is in the body of his father on the slopes of Dragon Mount. Even though I do think that the actor does a good job in being in these different bodies, I personally would have just preferred if they used a different actor for each one of these ancestral selves, because it's not the same person. He's not a reincarnation of this person. It's literally just his ancestor. And, what's wrong with just having a bunch of guys? Like, they don't have to look very similar to each other, so whatever. I mean, what a great challenge for the actor, though, so, good for him. So anyway, he gets approached by one of his fellow Aiel soldiers and is like, what's the matter with you, Janduin? Like, start fighting. And then he just starts fighting. He doesn't put up his veil, which definitely a mistake on the part of continuity. Like, they've established even in the show that, okay, when you have to start fighting, you put up your veil. But I guess they didn't have his mother do this in this scene either. So back in, what was it? It was the end of season 1. Was it the end of season 1? I think it was the end of season 1 where we saw Rand's mother fighting on the mountain and she wasn't putting her veil up. But this is like a thing. You're supposed to put it up. But again, I understand why they did it because, oh, we want to see their facial expressions. That's where the acting is happening. But the thing is he's got this big old beard and he's wearing a lot of prosthetics on his face anyway. So like he can only really express with his eyes, which are visible anyway when the veil is up. So... but it's fine. I'm complaining again. So anyway, he finds his wife dead. Well, he's brought to her and says, oh my gosh, I found their king. I killed him with my own spear. And then the guy who's with him says, there's no sign of the baby. And then he screams. Like, I don't really have any complaints about this with the exception of the veil thing, but I understand why they did it. I don't know why they couldn't have him go up and then down for this scene where this is the only moment he has to be really expressive with his face. But yeah. So anyway, now Rand knows that his own ancestor is the one who killed Moraine's dad, but also he knows that it was his father who was Aiel. It's a lot to take in there. But so anyway, yeah, Rand now knows the story of his mother and father on the mountain, knows that there's this connection between his father killing Moraine's uncle, and then, yeah, nothing really to say. I mean, the thing about this episode is it's basically info dumping, but it's done in the most pleasing way possible, which is we get to see it play out. Like, this is the ultimate way to info dump. And we're simultaneously doing some world building or seeing the world being built. We are seeing how the Aiel were created. And we're seeing it backwards going like, okay, why are they like this? All right, now we'll go back even further. Why are they like this? And I really like the way that they've portrayed Rand in the present tense where he's struggling to take a step forward, where it almost looks like the wind is blowing really hard, or almost like when you have those dreams and you're trying to run and it's like you're going in slow motion. It's a struggle to move every single step. It's like they managed to capture that. So I have to give them a lot of credit for portraying this in a way that, for me, this is actually better than what I imagined with Rand going through the columns. Like, I like this better than what I was picturing in my head. It's very dramatic. Anyway, now we're back even further with one of the Aiel chiefs and his wife, and they are at Rhuidean before it has been enveloped in this cloud. And then we see the formation of the fog, which I liked. I mean, this looks nice. And we got, anyway, so his name is Mandein in this, and his wife is telling him, look, you need to go in there and meet with what's-her-face Sedai, and whatever it is that she says, you got to do what she says. We've all been dreaming the same thing, and any of the chiefs who don't come here and don't agree to what she says, like, their names are just lost forever. And we also get the formation of why there is this tradition of bringing no weapons into Rhuidean, because the wife says, the Aes Sedai said, you're not supposed to bring any weapons into Rhuidean. Like, this is not a territory that is part of some long tradition of the Aiel. He's here and does not know that you don't bring weapons in there. So he's informed by his wife, who was informed by the Aiel, don't bring your weapons. So he hands over his spear and she thrusts it into the ground, the first spear of what will soon be many, or will someday be many. So they get to the tree, and Latra Sedai is pulling this round sphere out that's glowing-ish. And everybody's asking her, it's because there's a bunch of other chiefs there going, hey, why'd you call us here? And she's like, because the last people who were the true, real Aiel or whatever, they're all dead. The ones who planted this tree, who built this city, they're gone. And then she asks them, why don't you carry swords? And they're like, because it's forbidden, duh. And she's like, but you don't know why? So she explains that you guys need to send whoever's going to lead among you, the chiefs or the wise ones, you got to send them here. And one of the chiefs is like, wait a minute, so we just send somebody to you to learn about our past, and then whoever does, they get to lead all the Aiel? And she's like, no, the one who will lead all of the Aiel, the chief of chiefs, the Karakharn. She explains that, the prophecy. Basically, she makes the prophecy, I think, where she says he will come from Rhuidean at dawn, and he will gather all of you with bonds. He will bind you all with bonds that cannot be broken, and then he will destroy you. Basically, it's all that stuff that we've heard at this point. But we're watching the creation of that tradition among the Aiel of why they go into Rhuidean. They send their chiefs into Rhuidean, and it's because they need to learn about their past, because the real Aiel are basically extinct, and they don't know why they are the way that the ones who are still around don't know why they are the way they are. And she's like, you have to know about your past in order to lead. And then she creates the columns and says, your chiefs will walk through these columns and walk through the footsteps of your ancestors. Basically, she says, you're going to live their lives. You're going to see the world through them. And you're going to learn why you don't carry swords and why we Aes Sedai call you guys oath breakers. Now, I don't know I can't recall if this has been established in the show, but at this point in the books, you have heard the Aiel refer to oath breakers, and it is like really insulting. Like, you would want to kill yourself rather than be an oath breaker. So for her to say you guys are the oath breakers is like, you guys all deserve death, sort of a thing. Unfortunately, since the show didn't do that, or I believe the show didn't do that, you would get to this and you're going, as a viewer who doesn't know anything in the books, you go, what's the big deal of being an oath breaker? It doesn't hit as hard as it does in the books at this point. So I would have had the characters referencing this earlier in the show, at least in a memorable way, because I can't remember it. Maybe they did and I just don't recall. But yeah, the show does the best it can to convey that this is a big deal to the Aiel, even though they're revealing that it's a big deal in the moment that it's a big deal. Basically, Rand's ancestor goes, I'll go, I don't fear my past, and we are not oath breakers. And then we jump into Rand again in the present, still struggling to get through, and we can see the other dude whose name I have forgotten, Moiraine. He's up ahead and he's really struggling also. And then we jump into the next ancestor, which is a young man, and he is hugging the baby tree. The tree is a baby now.
They're so high right now. We're not low. Oh, dude, I don't know about you, but I'm fucking hungry as balls. Yeah, no shit, dude. Let's eat. Hey, no, I don't feel like delivery tonight. What about KFC? Yeah. No. We've been there too many times.
Then we get as much exposition into this dialogue as possible. So he's with his two buddies and talking about, like, they say it's from before the breaking and that just sitting under its branches makes you feel peaceful. I totally get it, which is what Rand said in the present tense when he first went underneath the big tree. Then as they exit where this tree is, you see that it's inside of a wagon that looks very much like the wagons that Tuatha'an use. If you were watching this show and you didn't immediately connect the Aiel with the Tuatha'an the moment you see, oh, they're in wagons.
But no, I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to zip my mouth.
They start talking about the whole reason why they've got this tree, Aviendha Sora, that they're going into the desert to build a city in the desert and they're going to plant it there. A city of peace, only Aiel. And then he comes across his mother who looks devastated and is like, what's going on? And she says, your sister was kidnapped. She was doing the last of the washing and she got kidnapped. And this is like, the events happen off screen. It's okay. Because this is one of those situations where the writing, the exposition in the writing where they are telling us things that have happened and they're doing it in a way that it would have been much nicer if we could see these things play out. It would have felt a lot more organic. That's the more appropriate way to do it. But because of what's going on in the story at this point and how much they have to cram into this one episode, we accept it more because it's like, well, what other way could you possibly do this? So I remember when this episode first came out and I was having discussions with people in the comments and some live streams, not live streams, what are they called? Podcasts or whatever, where we were talking about this. This sort of writing is not any better than the writing that we were getting in the dialogue in other episodes. It's just that because of the structure of this episode where we are cramming a lot of story into these little flashbacks like this, these vignettes, it feels more appropriate. It feels like, this is where you would do this. It's like the bad writing is more acceptable because this is kind of one of the only ways to do it without taking up huge amounts of time. So it's okay. It's unfortunate that, when you've seen this pattern in other episodes where there was time to do stuff, you still saw this kind of exposition just coming out like this over and over again. People walking and talking. Anyway, Rand's ancestor, whose name is Lewin, by the way, is like, oh my gosh, we have to go and get her back. And then one of the elders goes, no, there will be no talk of that. All will be well. All will be fine. Just go off, do your own thing, like everything will be all right. It's like, things are not all right. So the 3 boys go off and say they are still alive. They were taken by the stream. Maybe if we go down to the stream, we can see where they, follow their tracks to where they went to. And then we can, go and rescue them. But they can't use violence. So one of the 3 is like, we can't do, what are we going to do? We can't do anything. And they're like, we're not going to kill anybody. We're not going to do any violence. So it is like, at this point, you should be like, this is the Tuatha'an. They are the Tuatha'an. And then we jump to them looking over a ridge at the camp, and they are making their plan. We're going to sneak in, and we're going to wake them up, and we're going to sneak them out. That's all we got to do. And they're like, what if the bandits wake up? And one of the friends is like, I'm not leaving Colleen. So it's Rand's ancestor's sister, and then also one of his friends' sisters were taken. And then Lewin says, put your dust veils up so that they can't see our faces. So if anything happens, they wouldn't be able to be identified. So we see the tradition of the Aiel lifting their veils to cover their faces whenever they go in to fight. So they sneak into the tent and they're waking up the sisters and like, come on, let's go. And they're like, why did you come here? What do you think? The boys end up killing the bandits, but one of them gets fatally injured in the process. And they're all horrified at the fact that they have killed, even though one of them has died. But then the friend picks up a sword and Lewin says, no, not a sword. And then he picks up the spear, which he had used to kill with, and says, a spear, this can put food in the pot. A sword has no other weapon but to kill, or no other purpose but to kill. But a spear can put food in the pots. And so we get the tradition of why the Aiel only use spears. And then he says, a sword is not the way of the leaf. And so we're like, the way of the leaf.
Oh my God.
And then we can faintly, before this scene ends, and then we jump to them returning to the caravan, we can hear the faint tune of a song. And remember that the Aiel are always looking for the song. And this will become, I wouldn't exactly say important, but relevant later. So the others in the caravan are not pleased when they hear that the boys have killed. And they said, what were we supposed to do? They were trying to kill us. They did kill Charlin, that's the 3rd friend, and they hurt the sisters. And his grandfather says, we bury our dead and we move on. What else is there? And the thing is, I don't understand why they wouldn't have gone to try to save the girls. I mean, even if they just showed up in a large group, there was only 2 bandits, at least that I could see. It was hard to tell. They could have just waltzed in there and grabbed the girls and the bandits could, throw rocks at them or something. I don't exactly see how it would be against the way of the leaf if 2 of your family members were off being what we can assume was rape and torture. Like, we just have to abandon them to that and there's nothing we can do. I think this is why the pacifism of the Tuatha'an seems to rub a lot of people the wrong way, is because if there's moments, I don't recall specifically how many bandits there were in the camp. I seem to remember more than 2 from the book, I mean. But it doesn't make sense that you have a group of at least, 10 or 15 adults. Adult men. Why didn't they just go and grab the girls and bring them back? Like, oh no, they stole from us. We should just let them steal. Oh no, they're killing slowly 2 of our young ladies. We should just let them do that? So if somebody is dying, don't help them. It doesn't work. At least the way the show is depicting this. If from what I recall in the book, and it starts out with the boys stalking the camp, it seems like they were up against greater odds, but I may be remembering wrong. It's been forever since I read the scene. But yeah, so the grandfather says, you're no longer Aiel, go away, you're out of here. And Lewin is begging his mother, who's walking away as well, like, mother, please. And she's like, who are you who calls me mother? Hide your face from me, stranger. You're not my son, or you have the face of my son. Basically, we're seeing more of why they cover their faces when they're killing. It's also a shame thing. But they are referred to as the Oathbreakers, the Aiel. So the boys turn away from the caravan and raise their veils, and they say, what do we do now? And they're looking off into the desert, and they go, well, we protect them. They can't do violence, but we can now. So that becomes their new thing. They're going to protect the Tuatha'an, who are the Aiel. So they themselves are not really the Aiel. It's the Tuatha'an are technically the Aiel, but they don't know it. We get back to Rand taking his next step, and this time he passes Moiraine, who's gouging out his eyes, which, yeah, this is basically what Like, this is basically what we have happening in the books as well, from what I recall. And then we switch over to Moiraine. Oh boy. She's feeling this weird vibration that she's sensing in the ground, and I actually like how this is done. Like, it sounds mechanical, or like machinery. It's very cool. And then she walks up to the tree and uses the one power to spread the vines and finds this little sphere, this glowing sphere that the Aes Sedai in the flashback were originally pulled out of the tree. I don't know how Moiraine was supposed to know it was there. Like, did she know? Because this did not happen in the book, so I don't, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, she pulls it out, tucks it in her pocket, and walks off. She should know exactly what that thing is if she knew that it was there in the first place, and she should feel what it is if she's holding it, but she doesn't. She just puts it in her pocket and like, okay, walking on. It's okay. It's not that bad. I mean, it is bad. Oh.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
So she comes across the 3 rings, and Aviendha, who looks like she is in horror, sort of levitated in the center of one of these rings, and like she's completely out of time, or in a pocket outside of time or something. And Moiraine steps into one of the other rings and is immediately levitated up as well. And then we begin this series of visions that she has, which she knows what she's going to see the moment she steps into them. I'm not totally disappointed in the way that they depicted this. Like, if you were going to visually represent that she goes through 1,000 lifetimes, this is not the worst way to do it. Showing that there are very small variances sometimes in what events occur. I do question some of the things that they depict having happened, but I won't go over all of them. Maybe I'll just show some still shots of what some of the things are, but anyway, she starts seeing her thousands of possible futures. But yeah, I do visually like this idea of these 3 rings being propped up against each other, and it looks like they were floating almost in water. I'm sure that they're in some sort of a harness and they're hanging, and they've got all kinds of wind fans being blown on them and stuff, and then they've filmed it at super high speed so that it plays in high definition but at slow motion, so it's almost like they look like they're underwater. I like this. I think it looks cool. I think it's been pretty well established that this is a fanfic of the book series. Now, this episode is much truer to the source material than any of the other episodes in the past, but the show as a whole is a fanfic. And when we see all of these different visions that Moiraine has, it's almost like we're getting little snippets of various fanfics from like across history. For the past several decades, people have been writing fanfics of this show, of this book series, and we're seeing little pieces of what that might be. Because we didn't get what Moraine's visions were in the book. We don't know what she saw. Well, we don't see it play out like this. So anyway, it does feel like we're getting, okay, what was it that you wanted to do that we can't do? Let's do that. Let's have Moiraine and Aviendha are together. Or Moiraine is now the Amerlin's seat, and Egwene is her, I forget what the name of the one who holds the staff is, whatever, doesn't matter. You just get all these different scenarios, and we're seeing like the little indications of what the situation is. It's like everybody gets to see a piece of their fanfic in the show. We get back to Rand walking through the pillars and the next ancestor, which is, he's now in the childhood of Lewin's grandfather, who was the leader of the caravan in the previous ancestor. We see that they've just been attacked or something, and his grandfather is now having a discussion with another woman who says, we're leaving. We're going our separate ways. The Aiel have killed the last of the men who can channel, and so the world is settling. It's, this is the breaking of the world then, or after that point anyway. And he's saying, no, we have to keep going. We have to cross the spine. So this is at a point before the whole veils going up thing, we saw that the people split. So at some point, the Aiel who were with the Aiel who became more like the common, like the current day Aiel, they must have died off, and then all we got is the other Aiel. But these ones who split off earlier, they're off doing their own thing now. These are the ones who eventually, I believe, become the Tuatha'an. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I am. But the lady is talking to the grandfather saying, you know, hey, we're just going to find a place where we can go settle and we can sing the harvest songs again. Don't you remember the songs? And he's like, yeah, I remember them. And this is referencing the song that we heard little echoes of in the previous flashback, and that we have heard the Tuatha'an talking about before. So it's very important to them that they be able to recite, to be able to sing this song, harvesting their crops. But so apparently the ones splitting off are the Oath Breakers. So this is where the Tuatha'an get the reputation of being the Oath Breakers. And yet the peaceful relationship is still there, because as the soon-to-be Tuatha'an are walking away, the last of the Aiel are saying, you will always be welcome at our fires, like, you go in peace from us, etc. You get the idea. But yeah, so the grandfather and grandson now are talking, and they go, what are we doing now, grandfather? And he goes, well, we bury our dead and we go on. It's funny that they keep repeating this, and he had said it before in the conversation with the lady, saying it in Old Tongue. But this saying, and it's on its own, it's like it's not the most perfect saying for this very pacifist culture, because you bury your dead, but you don't go on if you're all dead. So, and that's what ends up happening to them. I'm not here to criticize pacifism, but pacifism to the extreme is, there's not much of a future of it. You have to be able to defend your own self. And if you don't, you die out. And I guess you could say, well, we died honorably, but like, okay. I suppose living a dishonorable life is not good, but at the same time, you can't make good choices or do good things if you're dead. So they bury the mom and lay a flower on her forehead, and we can see that their burial practices are the same as the current day Aiel. And he's talking about the dream that that his mother had told, the dead mother, the grandfather's daughter, I'm assuming here, has told her that they know that we're supposed to go off to the east to a city that the Aiel can live in peace. And so this is Rhuidean. So we're seeing that the first traces of this whole dreaming and communicating with each other is a thing among the Aiel. They're obviously all communicating with each other. And the one thing I'm not really stoked about this is that they only show this grandfather and grandson here. And he's got the tree in the back of his wagon, and he just lifts up in place of a horse and starts pulling this huge wagon. This old man would not be able to carry this thing very far. They should have downgraded, or there should have been a lot more than just the two of them. We get back to Rand in the present, still walking through the columns, and then we get what is going to be the final flashback, and it looks like the Aiel are doing a lot better. They don't seem quite as ragged. It's at the breaking, I believe, where we can see off in the horizon that the world is burning, but the city that they are in is huge and very modern. Rand's ancestor approaches Latra Sedai, who was the old woman before, but now is a young woman. And we saw her in that flashback with Luz Theron. This was the other Aes Sedai who separated from him and said, like, you should not be doing this to Ishamael, or was it Ishamael or the Dark One? I can't remember. Either way, she was not in favor of helping the male Aes Sedai at that point, and stepped away from it. And then, of course, it ended in this huge disaster. So now you've got Rand's ancestor approaching her, and he's like, all of our preparations are ready. And she's like, you've got clippings from the Chora. That is where this tree originated from. And he says, yep, we've got a tree for every wagon, 10,000. So there's 10,000 of them to start. And they end up being reduced down to one by the end of all of this journey across time. So he's about to take off with his 10,000 clippings, everybody, one in every wagon. And Latra goes, hang on one second. And she goes and she takes that white glowing sphere that we saw before and is about to give it to him. And her, I don't know if this is, I forget what the name of the role is, but it's basically like her protector and the one who speaks to announce, her herald almost, is like, hey, don't give that to him. Like, what are you thinking? They're pacifists. And she goes, the Aiel have shown that there is courage in peace or something. And they're like, they can't defend it. We can't let this fall in the wrong hands. Anyway, there's this debate between the two of them. And so all of this discussion is essentially there to show that the Aiel are still pacifists at this point. And the Aes Sedai are trusting them with something that is very powerful and important, because at one point Latra even says that I fear that if the Aes Sedai males who can channel were to get a hold of a woman who knows how to use this thing, that we'd be in big trouble, basically. And she goes, don't forget, it was one of our own, Moiraine Sedai, who set the Dark One free, basically, and then changed her name to Lanfear. So we go, oh, Lanfear's passed. I forgot, this actually isn't the last flashback that we get. I thought it was the last one. It's not the last one. I forgot there was the other one, which is actually the coolest of all of them. They both agree to hand it over. So she's handing it over, and she explains what it is. This is the Sakarnan, which is a special sangreal made only for women, and its male complement is the Sword of Kalendor. And she says where Kalendor is. I don't know why the Aiel would need to know this information, and I cannot remember how this scene went down, if it went down. I don't think they even handed over a thing like this, if I recall. It's been so long since I've read the books, and honestly, this sticks more in my memory, only because I've read so much more of the other books. So this was like this whole event was a blip on the timeline of reading the books for me. But she tells him where the Sword of Kalendor is, that it's hidden in a stone in a fortress that cannot be breached, which we never get to in the show, unfortunately. But she says that the sword has been trusted to be protected by war and fear, and she says, and I'm trusting this to peace. And here is where the oath is made. It's not necessarily about the tree so much as about this item, apparently. And he says, we will care for what you have entrusted to us until you want it back. I swear it. And so she hands over the sangreal, the Sakarnan. And she instructs him to keep moving, always keep moving until you find a place of safety. And he says, okay. So we get the traveling lifestyle of the Aiel as well. Where did that come from? Like I said, this is all basically a bunch of world building and exposition, but instead of it being through dialogue that we're hearing it, I mean, it is in dialogue, but we're seeing it like a play. This is a way more interesting way to reveal the reason for why a world is the way that it is. And it's definitely interesting to watch. Like, I enjoy this far more, even though it is still making the same kinds of mistakes that we've seen in the past. It's less egregious because there really is only one way to do this, and it's working for me. Plus, I get to see all these cool vignettes of these weird worlds, except for the Aiel stuff, or not the Aiel stuff, the Tuatha'an stuff. Like, it was basically caravan and caravan, so whatever. Doesn't bother me that much, really. So in closing, she tells them all to keep these oaths, keep the way of the leaf, and they get on their knees. There's a whole bunch of them now. It's not just Rand's ancestor, but it's the rest of his people, and they all swear that they will keep the way of the leaf forever and do what she has said. And then they pack up their trees into their carriages or wagons, I guess. They're very modern looking, which I like. And we get the one major divergence, other than the whole Sakarnan thing, from the source material, where Rand's ancestor, whose name I cannot, climbs up into the front of the wagon, and his partner is a man. So unless in the future there was some way that two men can procreate together, either this relationship acquires a female third, or it doesn't last long, but at some point this ancestor is going to end up mating with a woman so that there can be descendants that Rand will have come from. Ultimately, I think that there's nothing really super wrong with having this sort of a thing. It's just that it does make everybody who's watching go, well, wait a minute. So this didn't last, is what we're saying. Or there was some weird complication and we brought in a lady. So basically, the Aiel were servants of the Aes Sedai, who were pacifists also. And we've seen them swear that they will keep the way of the leaf forever, but the only Aiel that we know of in the present are very good at killing, so they have abandoned the way of the leaf. So they are oath breakers on many levels at this point. So we see that the thing that the Aiel pride themselves on so much, that they are so good at doing, is the very thing that makes them into oath breakers. They are hypocrites in the extreme. I mean, it's not like they knew what they were doing, so you gotta kind of, like, it's just me going like, come on guys, it's not that bad. It's not like you knew you were doing something wrong. And then we get the final flashback, which I like this one. So we get back to Rand. He's still walking through the columns, and the final flashback is somewhere very futuristic. We see that the Earth is nice as it is, but in the air there's this huge Death Star-like sphere, and down in the field are the Aiel, and they are harvesting, it looks like wheat, and they're using old scythes and singing a song in Old Tongue, and Rand's ancestor is up in this sphere looking down on them, smiling from a big circular window, and he's approached by Lanfear, who has a different name now. So from the conversation, we gather that Rand's ancestor is a servant to the Aes Sedai, and he has been on this ship with Moiraine Sedai, who is Lanfear, of course. And she's saying, oh, you know, aren't these your relatives basically down in the field? Why don't you go and visit them? He's like, I will tomorrow. Today's a really important day for you guys, so something important's happening today. So Moiraine, or Lanfear, says, tomorrow everything is going to be different. And this is when Rand's ancestor asks, what exactly are you, like, what do you think you've found? And she explains it's the thinnest place in the pattern, a place I think that we can punch through and find what's on the other side. This is a research station, or I seem to recall it was like a university/research station sort of a thing. Anyway, he's asking, so what's on the other side? And she's like, the true power, one that can be used by a man or a woman, and it will change everything. And she says that even people who are not Aes Sedai will be able to use it. She's like, imagine you and your people wouldn't have to bring in the harvest by hand. And he's like, yeah, but it's kind of nice doing that. It feels good to feel the earth beneath your feet and to bring the harvest in with your own hands. So Moiraine is like, why don't you go on and go down and be with your family and, you know, go sing a song with them or whatever. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, nothing's more important than holding close the people that you care about, blah, 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 whatever. And so he's like, okay. And so he goes, and he's down in the field with his people, and they're bringing in the harvest. Everybody's joyful, and just, I mean, as long as you don't have to do this to survive, you're just doing it because you want to, that's great. I'm so cynical right now. And that is when all hell breaks loose. They hear an explosion. They look back at the floating university lab, whatever, and it is basically imploding, and it falls upon a city that is below it, and what's left is what looks like a tear in the sky. It's this black, pulsating, has sort of a electronic sound underneath it. Really liked this. I was like, this is cool. I've never seen anything like this in a movie or a show before. It has a very distinct and unique feel to it. So it's such a shame that this show was so bad that they canceled it. If only it was good and we could have had this kind of production value behind a faithful adaptation. It's such a shame. We get back to Rand, who sort of collapses and rolls over, and we can see on his arms that the 2 dragon marks appear on his arms. And then we transition from that to Aviendha, who's laying on the ground, and he comes to wake her up, and his voice is different. It's not Rand's voice, it's a weird, different voice. And I have no idea who it's supposed to be, but it startles Aviendha. I mean, other than just seeing that Rand is there, but, you know, anyway, she notices the marks on his arms, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're the Karakarn. And he apologizes to her about the sword. He's like, I'm so sorry about the sword. I didn't understand. And she's like, and what, now you do? And he's like, well, I understand enough to know that I'll never fully understand. I mean, he was living in the minds of his ancestors, so he does understand. Aviendha's sort of hostility towards Rand in the book has always been depicted as her resisting realizing she likes him, but she's also friends with, what's her name? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her name. Come on, redheaded chick. What's her name? Elaine. And here, it just seems like she's, I don't know, in denial that he's the Karakarn, or doesn't know that he actually went and experienced his past, like his ancestors' lives before. I don't know. Who knows? I'm so like annoyed at the rest of this show being bad that I'm ready to tear apart even the slightest like misalignment. I'm pretty sure that Aviendha doesn't understand, actually, if you think about it, because she doesn't know about all these past iterations of the Aiel, right? Like, you don't use the sword. You can only touch use the spear as a weapon because it puts food in the pot. But the thing is that she wouldn't know everything else. Like, he understands better than she does at this point, right? Because all the chiefs keep what they know a secret, right? Oh my gosh, I'm confused now. I don't know what the show is trying to say here. So she gets up and she starts walking away, and Rand is like, where are you going? And she's like, back. And he's like, to the tents? Like, where else would she be going? I mean, I guess if she's going further into the city, whatever. But she's like, aren't you coming too? And he's like, yeah, not without Moiraine. And because Aviendha told him that, she's still doing her thing. And then she goes, whatever, Wetlander, and walks off. She just saw that he is the Messiah of her people and did not address that at all. All we saw was her noticing those things, and then she immediately pivoted to, oh, what, now you understand why the sword is a big deal to all of us? Anyway. This was a good episode for fans of the books because we finally dug into some of Rand's stuff. And he has a lot more stuff in the books than he ever had in the show, with the exception of this episode, which was basically a Rand episode. When you have a story about the Messiah who is either going to save the world or destroy it, and the closer he gets to saving it, the more insane he's going to go, that's the head you want to be inside of. That's the one that you want to watch and observe go through changes that will lead him to that point, especially when he starts out as a simple shepherd boy from the mountains who really just wanted to do his own thing until he found out, well, you can't because you're supposed to, sacrifice yourself to save the world, basically. That's the guy we want to see develop into the person who was capable of doing that, and we did not get any of that until this episode. I think that's why, from what I understand, and I haven't checked any numbers, but I heard that this is the highest rated episode. It's because it was a Rand-centered episode, because you finally got into the head of the most interesting character. So I tell my clients a lot that if you find yourself with a bland main character and somebody else is going through a significant amount of change, you should really consider switching your POV to the other character, the one that goes through the most change. That's the one that people will be the most engaged in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with people in the head of your main character, always being most interested in what they see the other character doing. So the one that goes through the most change, that's the one that you should probably focus on. And in this case, we know what's coming. We just don't know how it's going to get there. So that should be the head we want to be in the most. Anyway, that's all I got to say on the matter. Let's keep going. Anyway, Rand goes and sits under the tree, Aviendha Sora, which, remember, when he first approached the tree, said it felt peaceful. And then when we saw his past life where he was Luin and he was just sort of embracing the tree, he said he could feel that it was bringing peace. And then when we got even further back to, what was her name? Latra Sedai, when she was handing over the Sakarnan, and she said, hey, about the tree, hopefully everybody will find peace underneath its branches or whatever. I like that he goes and does that. That was actually a nice little touch where he goes and he sits under the tree to wait for her, almost like he's trying to find that peace. And then when we cut to Moiraine, we're seeing more of these fanfic vignettes. And yeah, she's banging Rand, and then she's banging Lanfear, and then she's mostly just getting killed by Lanfear over and over and over again. We see that Rand has turned evil, and Lanfear is pretty much always the one that's just killing her over and over and over again. And then we see a lot of scenes of her being killed by Lanfear in the desert. And this is definitely being put here so that we will think that when we get to that fight at the finale, that she's gonna die there. And then it cuts. We're done with that, and we cut to the moon in the sky. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a pointless scene that we descend upon. We've got Lan sitting by a fire, and Egwene comes and sits by him, and she's like, it's been 7 days that they've been in Rhuidean, and they haven't come back. Apparently, Aviendha's been back for 2 days, but the two of them have been in there still. So Egwene wants to go in after them, and Lan's only response to this is, they wanted us to stay. The whole point of this scene was basically just to inform the audience that they've been in there for 7 days, and then to address why nobody went in after them, even though it's been 7 days. That's it. I mean, it's not the worst thing ever. Again, it's just not great. If you're going to have characters interacting on screen, do it to progress their characters a little bit. Do it to progress the story a little bit. If you're not doing one of those two things, you're literally just having a scene in order to inform the audience of a thing. And I totally forgot. The next shot is the sun rising and Lan is crying. He would know if she was dead because of the bond. Unless it's severed the moment she steps into Rhuidean, right? He would be feeling all the things. Oh, whatever. And the final shot is we've got Rand carrying Moiraine out of Rhuidean, and Lan and Egwene rush to meet them at the Spears, and he hands over Moiraine, and Lan carries her off, and well, now Lan is on set. But anyway, that's it. No fanfare. Nobody I mean, we can't say that nobody witnesses him coming with the dawn, you know, coming out of Rhuidean with the dawn, because Egwene and Lan are there, but we don't know who's standing behind the camera. But since Lan and Egwene were with the camp, we can assume that the Aiel were there too. I mean, they didn't all just sleep in, and only Lan and Egwene noticed that people were coming. So not much to say on this, really. It was, from what I recall of these moments in the book, which took a lot longer to get through in the book than what is depicted in the show, which is fine. That's how it is. That, like, it takes 40 hours to read some books, but you can watch a 2-hour decent adaptation of it. The main plot points and information that was conveyed in those vignettes still got through. And it's unfortunate that everything around this episode really doesn't hold this up very well. You get a great Rand episode where events are occurring that we can see why it would affect Rand in certain ways, why it would be meaningful to the development of the Aiel and their culture, and how it's related to everything else going on in this world. But the dialogue and the characters and the events that don't make sense, everything leading up to this moment it just doesn't support it. So really, I don't have a whole lot to say about this episode. I will admit that I was far more critical of this episode than I probably should have been, and that has nothing to do with really what was in the episode itself, so much as everything that led up to it. Like, that's it again. You can't have a gemstone at this point when it's been nothing but manure up until now, because I've still got the taste of the manure in my mouth. Sorry. What a horrific analogy, but there you go. That's it, though. Hope it was fun. It wasn't exactly fun for me. I mean, it's tough to review an episode where you go, this is nice that they're doing this. I'm still finding flaws, and I still feel that residual anger, but what else am I going to do? We're going to get through this season as fast as I can. I can't believe I did this in one sitting, you know? I want to quit about halfway through, and even though with this one I sort of wanted to quit, it wasn't like as, oh my gosh, get me out of here as possible, because I was actually engaged in what I was seeing. So anyway, let's have a nice happy rest of my day, because it is still actually afternoon. Usually it's nighttime by the time I'm done recording these. So that's it. Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. Also hype if you know how to do that. Otherwise, please, if you have, what do I usually say? Oh yeah, if you have the means and you're feeling generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. That's it until episode 5. Be good to yourself.